This week, after checking a lotto ticket that had been sitting in her car for 8 months, an Auckland woman found she had won $1 million. Most big winners, who often become instant millionaires, usually want to remain anonymous. So there's a team at Lotto New Zealand that engage with and advise Kiwis who win big money. Lotto New Zealand Head of Corporate Communications, Lucy Fullerton, is with us now. Kia ora, Lucy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How much do you enjoy giving away money and seeing the lives of people transformed, hopefully for the better?
Yeah, look, it's a great job. And part of our job is making sure that the long-term outcomes for those people are good. And that's massively fulfilling. But honestly, the joy that people feel when they come into head office to claim their prizes, that's really catchy. And it's a great way to start the week.
And how do people generally react when they find they've won a considerable amount of money? At what stage does your team begin engaging with them?
Yeah, so, I mean, most people are pretty overwhelmed when it's a big Powerball prize. So we try and engage as early as possible. So the first step will always be claiming their prize. And then straight away, if they're a big Powerball winner, they'll be put through to my team or I. And we'll have a quick conversation with them. We're on call 7 days a week to take those calls. And then we'll generally, if it's a Powerball winner, encourage them to come into the office and claim their prize in person. And that just gives them that space, sort of a safe space to sit down and talk through it with us, and we can give them some really solid advice.
Because it's kind of overwhelming too, isn't it? It must be overwhelming for some of these people, a little bit surreal.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that word is something a lot of them use. It takes a wee while to process the massive change that they're going through. And it's life-changing in a great way, but it does sort of throw people a little bit. And I think the biggest thing is that we are there and we're sort of the only people that they will speak to about their winnings who have no personal interest in it. So we're just there to support them. And that's so important because they need to think really carefully about who they tell and when they tell people. And so it's just great to have that space to work through it and just get a solid plan in place right up front.
Now, do you know how many of these winners, these instant winners, are Maori?
Yeah, it's actually not something I know. And the reason for that is we don't tend to record or publicise any details about our winners. So we tend to agree with them sort of a generic descriptor, which might be an Auckland man or, a Tamuka woman. But generally they want to stay anonymous, so we keep all personal details private. I do know anecdotally there have been Māori winners since I've been at Lotto, but yes, we definitely don't have a number.
Yeah, no one's admitting it around here. How important is the advice? You've spoken about this, the way you engage. How important is the advice that you provide for these potentially newly minted millionaires?
So what we hear from our winners is it's really important. And we obviously don't offer financial advice. We leave that to the experts. But we do give them pathways to find the right financial advisor, and we put them in touch with the right person at their bank who can help them. And then other than that sort of high-level guidance as to what to do with their financial approach, we talk to them first and foremost about who do you want to tell? Think really carefully about who you want to tell. And there's no hurry, you might just tell one person now. And then what do you want to tell people? You don't need to tell them you've won $20 million. You could just tell them, look, I've had a big win, but, it's life-changing, but you don't have to tell them the amount. They're not going to know. And then we also talk them through how we will protect their anonymity while still talking publicly about it. Because as you can imagine with some of these big wins, media such as yourselves are quite keen to cover them and talk about how it feels for people. So we work with them to craft a story that talks about the feeling of winning and the excitement of winning, but doesn't talk about the individuals involved. Now,
we know that in the US, winners are paraded in front of television cameras. We don't do that here, which is a good way to protect them. Why is that?
It is all about those long-term outcomes. So as you'll know, we're a government-owned organisation, and 100% of our profits go to the community. And so, what we want is to make sure that everything we do is building New Zealand communities and helping create great long-term outcomes for people. So if there have been some very rare instances where people have wanted to speak about it publicly, and if so, we've supported them to do it in a really managed way. But generally, that is the best way to protect them, is to keep it private.
Lucy, what's the largest amount any one person has ever won in New Zealand, and what's their reaction been? Because we use that word surreal again. It's got to be around 30, 40 million, somewhere around there, I think.
Yep, so the largest is 44 million. That was won by a couple in the Hibiscus Coast, 2016. And then last October, I'm not sure if you remember, but there was 42 million won by a family in Pocono. So I had the privilege of meeting that family. And I mean, it's fascinating watching how this plays out in New Zealand, because Kiwis are so grounded. And what you find is, you know, they find out they've won this money and they're super excited. And, you know, there's probably some words uttered that I won't repeat on TV. But then when they come in to see us, you know, the first thing they jump to is, what will this mean for my whānau? What will this mean for my community? And that family from Pocono, you know, the first thing they were talking about, they weren't going out to buy a Lamborghini. They were talking about, how can we use this money to help, you know, build our community, or how can we help people?
Yeah, that's nice. I never heard from them. But we've just heard about the woman whose lotto ticket was in her glove box for 8 months. Obviously a very pleasant surprise, possibly overwhelming.
Absolutely. You'd be sort of thinking about what would have happened if I'd just grabbed everything out and thrown it in the bin.
Do you keep in touch with the winners at all once they've won, or do they just sort of head off into the yonder and pick up properties everywhere?
No, we do keep in touch. So the way we generally do it is we give them a call a couple of weeks afterwards just to check in and see how they're doing. Then we'll give them a call about 6 months later. And then we generally check in, I mean, not with everyone, but, you know, maybe every year or so, there'll be someone as we keep in touch with. So just mainly because after a year or so, they'll have lots of reflections on what advice we gave that was really helpful, what they could have had that was, you know, that they didn't get from us that we could have provided. So we really like to keep learning and then pass that guidance and advice they have down to other winners. And
just before you go, how many millionaires has Lotto produced?
Yeah, so it's more than 1,000 in our history. I think it's about 1,050, something like that. And obviously there's lots of first division winners that have been below that million mark, but have won sort of 500,000, something like that.
Beautiful. Thank you for your time. Lotto New Zealand Head of Corporate Communications, Lucy Fullerton. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks, Neil.